Dalai Damai Jibe Ra Nobara Jibe Ge Tarva Dan Tamji Jembe Warzu Jobara Jeba Tamji Jesu Jibe Ma Nam Ka Dan Nyambe Semchen Tamji Dewa Dode Dungar Dan Chi Nyordu Lana Mi Bara Yang Dabara Zobe Sanchur Boji Tobara jai dala damra jibi ja nobara jibi ge jarwa dam dam ji chen wadu jubara jiba dam ji je tu jibi ma nam ka dan nyambe sem chen dam ji deva dan den dungara dan chi nyor tu lana mi yang tabara zobe chanchur bo chi tobara isha.
All Mother sentient beings, limitless as space, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience, may they experience happiness, be free from suffering, and swiftly may they attain precious, unsurpassed, perfectly complete enlightenment.
Ye chi tu sang ma ji ji wa tu leng a yi song ge wa la. A guo ro ma xie fa tu leng a yi song ge wa la. Guo ro tu de ren ne song bi. Niu ma sang ta zam ji fa tu leng a yi song ge wa la. Guo.
For that purpose, until I attain Buddhahood, I will apply my body, speech, and mind to virtue. Until death, I will apply my body, speech, and mind to virtue. From today until this time tomorrow, I will apply my body, speech, and mind to virtue.
Ja, okay. 等那咱这的，这咱们美国被求救，现在有我学生，这美国被，可是国被求救，说呢，他美国被求救，对是这样啥的，咱是你多呢？做什么钱美国是，咱是这趟要做，头发的，旁部头发去，真的上把去，这光把去，下去长嘛，真的，做什么都要去，是吧？我真的，他身体吃了那种，他跟我们家的相片那种要不再多少嘛？真的，他的头发的长发都是几个嘛的，也种出啥的。我这秋季早晚嘛，就先季早晚秋，是在秋是在早晚中到秋光的，你是搞的还不做，我这先两年前呢，先季早晚秋送了在秋天季，然后以前那种说多少年，这6月啥的，所以我在他两代他两年前呢，先他那种是多少送呢？真的，他的头上起过嘛的，送出来的。
Oh, yes. Last time we spoke about the essentials or the 10 necessary things. Now, next are the 10 unnecessary things. First one is if once you realize that your mind is emptiness, you don't need to study and contemplate. So the reason why we study and contemplate and we practice in the first place is in order to realize the empty nature of the mind, in order to realize the mind itself. And since that is the purpose, once one realizes that, then there is no more need for study and reflection, because the purpose of study and reflection is to realize that. So when one gets to the root of it, one has found everything. Therefore, it is said that when the root of the mind is cut, then the root of all phenomena is cut. Or when the natural state of the mind is realized, then there's no more need for study and reflection.
哦，真的，就是么来的，别种我让他你才给弄来的，这娘娘我是俺来做事，娘娘我是俺来做事，那么也下样嘛，故事那不用去到过嘛都是，那我别下下来那叫得是，我他那我别下下来那叫得种多红，我他对那我别下下来说，他就是么来的了，现在俺当做。他说什么其他就这个是嘛不是汽油嘛了，但你光把讲呢，其实他在那路多送对他那个，可能出成绩那路哈过不一样，我之前在那路， 자바 초소나 초탐시 하고 보나 들을 저 요사래
Milarepa had said that when um, the when mere words and conventions begin to arise as an actual experience, as the light of experience, then there is no more need for more learning, more studying. And he said that to a yogin to whom the scriptures appear in a form of experience, such a yogin is always happy. So in that case, then once all these words in the scriptures actually appear as one's experience, not really become one's own experience, there is no need to learn anything else. So, and that was his main focus. He mainly focused on the experiential aspect of the practice in realizing the nature of the mind. And so, therefore, he realized that once the nature of the mind is realized, the nature of all phenomena is realized.
전에 다니바들의 리과 재미 제로 재미 피에나 리과 장마고 다 리과 처마미바 처마미비선 다 송직 처마미바 라표라 리과 선나다 샘네로 선나다 어제 처마미바 데 송직 처마미나 근데 리과 장고 마 히나 처마미바 히나 근데 리과 장고야 말스 리과 장 리과做的让就穷교사리 리과 되는 되는 다 리과穷교래当然啊，这一从这一从这上元你肯定为当讨这一从，我听着去给的那种混乱强着的，但这边的这边吃嘛的话，吃嘛这边可能跟我了，吃嘛米吧，我吃嘛芒果吧，这样的噻，吃嘛米吧些呢，这从这吃嘛米呢，这块米些讲到过呀，要嘛的，总有啥的。
Then number 2, once you recognize that awareness is undefiled, you don't need to purify misdeeds. And so once you know your own awareness to be pure, to be stainless, there is no more need then to purify any negativity. And so what we understand negativity, this stain to be, this defilement, it is our dualistic perception, this subject-object perception. And when that is not here, then there's also no more negativity. There's no negativity, there's nothing to purify, no wrongdoing to purify. So negativity mainly arises from dualistic grasping. And because we grasp at different concepts, we see this duality of high and low and good and bad and so forth. But when you realize the true nature of this awareness, this mind that perceives dualistic things, and that is recognized, then actually all of this wandering in samsara collapses in itself. And one comes to directly, one encounters one's own awareness that is unstained, by the dualistic grasping at subject and object. And so when that is recognized, since it is never defiled, awareness is never defiled, and when that is seen, then there is no more need for purification.
他只是块，就当是块吃米才能，他也都嘛在那，他头嘛在那做是块就有了，可能我他也呢，他吃嘛就有牛肉嘛的意思，我说那些人不是那个老牛的话有嘛的意思，我这人对这他这块讲过嘛的，讲过也有嘛的意思，我这块他开始呢，他从自己那么多罗我在穷学了，他是这样的，这块吃，这些人不在说说上街有把这这样着说的，这样蛮通话，现在这从自己那么多这块我都啥着是吧？我是说这，那从这次说嘛，没把钱呢，但是个可能就我说多少呢？真的，是，这个讲的呀，就嘛个过，这边有嘛了，这边没得这块是的，我都要有嘛了吧？我听你哦，这就巧的，啥的。
Mm. So this unstained, stainless awareness, that is the primordial mind, the primordial nature that has never been defiled. We also call it Buddha nature. And there's nothing to purify from this nature. There's no negativity to remove. All so-called negativity comes from our dualistic grasping thoughts. And these dualistically grasping thoughts arise momentarily, moment by moment. But underlying that is the Buddha. It is just that although the Buddha is already present, Buddha nature remains obscure due to this momentary presence of dualistic grasping thoughts. But when all these grasping thoughts fall away, and then all that is left is your true nature, and that is what we call this naked awareness. And when that is realized, there is no need to purify anything because there is no more grasping.
我真的，他那没去啷了，你呢？错啥嘛？我是那嘛先，他先你路去讲，嘛就吧，提去啷你的那他错啥过呀嘛的是，我他错过让西咋着去了，他个可是呢，你先把这错啥子过呀要嘛的，他先你路去讲的，你的呢？啊，先嘛就吧的，他先嘛就吧的，他这先可能先嘛就吧，先你路去，他先去我这有了你路去讲了。냠내 치리 틀어서 속초 마탕마 틀어 맞춰봐 셀랍쇼사 세 맞춰봐 상제인 제가 세 맞춰봐 상제래지 我当时这趟长远去上坡的原本这趟没吧，但是先 맞춰봐 내려오ക്കണം 但你对说嘛，这个 내려오면 냠내 치 조망보지 정도我提纲 냠내 치디나 我的呢，这 错啥都要 믹스요 말이었어 那几句嘛那个中多，敲在前部工地是另外一个就马冲击 메토 이게 얘네요. 그래서 저도 지금 내려오고 공들이 아무도 레디나 그거 계죠 뭐 붙이디나. 다들 저도 지금 내려오고 냐면 중요하대.最近 봐. 예로야. 我曾经有中多我听对象我说先把就把提跟人来起的呢我先把这操作的要有 말에 예좀 교사리
So, well, so yeah. And so now the third verse, once you abide on the natural path, you don't need to gather the accumulation. So there's no merit to be gained once you abide in the authentic nature. So this natural path here, it's the true authentic nature, meaning it is the unfabricated nature as it is. So that's this natural path, is your unfabricated nature. And when you abide in that nature, then merit actually accumulates on its own. There is no need to make a deliberate effort in it. There is no need to fix anything or do anything. If one just practices resting in that natural state without altering it in any way, without any mental fabrication, so the merit accumulates itself. And so that unfabricated mind is the Buddha within ourselves. And it is unobscured by these grasping thoughts, good and bad, dualistic thoughts. We also refer to it as the fresh awareness. And so, is it? So even though temporarily things appear as good or bad or this or that, in the natural state, they do not exist as such. Nothing is made. So it's the uncontrived, unfabricated state. And therefore, Milarepa had said that in the Mahamudra practice, do not engage in even virtuous activities of body and speech, as these will cause the realization of Mahamudra to fade away. And so once one rests in this unfabricated natural state, nothing else needs to be done at all.
我就是弄的啦，那的，
嗯
我听到龙啊给叫马冲这是龙啊给叫马冲神做的，当然，调整新波的讲那的啊，这开新波查这样的，过去用过来些啊，当黑洞洞样，当这是开新波一样的，他就忙不起来，他没讨一些结果，也都是这个意思。我听马球你们讲了，小松的话听就他知道马球你们讲了，小是马球你们讲，这像马球啊，这那楼梯看了，这你们来去过的也是，我才讲不把听就中了哇。
So this a quote by Milarepa that we just mentioned. So when he said that when resting in Mahamudra, do not apply yourself in virtuous activities of body and speech. So what that refers to is that, so normally, of course, we consider these virtuous activities as something that we should do. For example, we perform prostrations or circumambulations, or we recite prayers and so forth. So all of these are good practices, but if one actually rests in a state of Mahamudra and then one interrupts that in order to engage in these virtuous activities, then that state of Mahamudra may be lost, may fade away. And so therefore, while staying in a state of Mahamudra, continue to remain in the unfabricated, innate, natural state. And so this is what he told Gampopa.
哦，真的，他说吧，这呗，牛马讲了就啊，
Sumba la tomorrow.
说吧这呗，可得，他写吧这
Then
呗，
Sumba doesn't Shiba in sorry.
牛马讲了就呢，牛马讲了就呢，他不过没过是，他牛马讲是他想的那路子来的，牛马先就话没吧的，先也都没先就有了，先就话没吧的牛马是。反正牛马讲了，是他先那路提讲，他马出吧，人家种的呢，他们过没过是，他们是那他在他们，他知道他们是忙不有，他在前面的强求生了，他们的，他可惜那路去弄这个苗子有了，这个他们的，我这说他们咱说先多呀去的哇，我这你先多呀去的，你真的他们过不呀，没事有嘛的，是过那提醒好了，那的呢，我这他们是去嘛。像那种多样系，就是他脾气，他妈做的，他脾气啊，他们那新把钱在包皮上，我这里去学的话做的，我这另外那做的，我这他们那说没谁家他工作不一样嘛，像那种啊种的呢，种多。
Then number 4, once you can sustain the innate state, you don't need to train in the path of means. So once you have recognized the natural state and you're able to sustain remaining within that state, there is no need to practice the path of skillful means. And so here what's the term innate? The term innate here refers to something that is unchanging, that always is as it is. So unchanging means to be uncontrived, to be as it is, unaltered, natural or unchanging. So once you stay in this unfabricated innate state, there's no need to deliberately meditate on any of the paths of skillful means. And there are many different skillful means of practice. For example, we can practice the skillful means of love and compassion, or others practice the 6 yogas of Naropa and so forth. And all of these different practices are methods of skillful means that serve one purpose, and that is to realize the nature of the mind. So when the nature of the mind is realized, therefore, there is no more need to cultivate these skillful means, these skillful paths, because you already remain in the natural state of the mind. So the reason why we apply various methods, skillful means, is in order to realize the nature of the mind, because we have not realized it. But once it is realized, there is no further need to apply these skillful means.
他这这两天啥的，他牛马讲是对，他牛马讲马球是牛马讲是，他是牛马的马球吧，像那路是，他马球吧，是吧，足马的吧。他牛毛把那钞票立马有吧，从这去南头立马有吧，这牛马是就是。我这人民啊，中现在他在 nga so 상해 그래도 저 여러 상토 면토 그래도 라서把忙不就有了这就上面往去嘛说在城里去中国是都你们听到讲的康下的机密是康下的这机密吧那也别讲的是让他去哪的么子让中上一去也把产着在电路被送了看个嘛那真的让中上一去把产的去哪的么听呢有可能让上的嘛先着个他的意思是是那跑结婚了他说你们听他们把解密吧康下解密中是吧这康下的呢这解密吧我这里中的你们去下子了这就没看到你们中下层就拉票啥的
So then, when one remains stable in one's own natural state, that is the innate state that is totally unfabricated, there is nothing that you alter or do to it, but you just naturally abide within that state, and there is no alteration of afflictive emotions, and there are no conceptual thoughts within the mind and all, then so that natural state, that's the state that remains completely uncontrolled by all of these. So it remains unaffected by any notions of good or bad, or various hopes and fears and so forth. So when that is sustained, that inner state, then one lets whatever arises pass without a trace. So whatever arises, one allows that to arise and pass. And as it passes, all arisings leave no trace behind. So Tilopa said in the Ganges Mahamudra that thoughts are self-arisen and self-liberated, like ripples in water. They arise, and the moment they arise, just like a ripple on water, it already fades into itself. It arises on its own and it dissolves into itself. And as it dissolves, not even a trace of it remains.
真的，咱挺久的，咱能做去年的去，咱没做过没过是。我咱能做的去年，咱能做俺当初能做么不啷的吧？你能这从这都快修，真的能做去年写修嘛是吧？我这可是去年写，咱能做可能那这一个写书那这没做过我们国家有嘛的是。这就是没来的配送多，还是经常工程那些，那没做过吧？能做一次。这经常工程那些，那这没做过的那能做那种多。这也就是没做没写过，我们国家有嘛的是，咱能做去年题。你那他俺做能做的从这到话在修从这边呢，提起那了，这真的没得想着，或者真的从这想着，或者真的年来提个拉着，或者能做是第四个的有的。咱说俺不别说了，是你两姐姐吧，求结果，那往两姐姐吧，求口，能做两姐姐吧，求你肉吧的，是求你肉吧。我听着呢，我在中国，听着，听着在那种写送那真的，哎呀，我才来，但是别讲了，成个当初能碰着谁，看见那在南红那，他在你们那，完了没钱呢，他能做在个人，能做在我那现在让一出的有嘛的。俺那做的，俺在让你出的那小钱不在用的，现在听着钱把它演一口，这里你们提起在嘛弄嘛做，真的，提起来这块块，俺你们是拉着是吧？在你们西南，这样的样子，我们现在操作在你们讲用途呀，听着第一次看到有啥的意思。顾客来所做一个，但来谈不办，那在俺那来在那，但我说你们来西扎，那在起码做不来，那在。可来样的样子，工作现在这压力公平着呀，才用不着。个那么多忙出嘛学来的这，成本新出边才用不着。我当年来也不来，那咱学嘛不着吧
And then next verse then was it number 5? Once you recognize that thoughts are the dharmata, the innate nature, you don't need non-conceptual meditation. And so once you understand that thoughts are dharmata, dharmakaya, there's no need to meditate on non-thought. So generally we have a lot of thoughts in our mind, and because of all these thoughts in our mind, we constantly fall into a dualistic perception. And so this happens because we do not recognize thoughts for what they are. We do not recognize their dharmata, meaning their essential nature. We don't recognize the essential nature of these thoughts. And when that is recognized, when the essential nature, the true nature of thoughts is seen, then that itself is non-thought, is so-called practice of non-thought. And therefore, since that itself, seeing what thoughts really are, since that itself is non-thought, there is therefore no need to deliberately meditate on non-thought or non-conceptuality. Milarepa said that when was it Chinang kom to the machine.
尽量讲出嘛，现在尽量的怎么讲出嘛，现在没talk过，哪能 talk 的，啥没 talk 过的，哪能
Yeah,
talk？
So if one does not recognize, if one doesn't understand all appearances to be meditation, if one sees whatever appears as separate from meditation, then meditation on non-thought itself becomes another thought, another conceptual meditation. And so and because of our thoughts, we develop all kinds of dualistic perceptions. And even if we want to develop a state of non-thought, a non-conceptual state, it's because of seeing things in this dualistic way that we lose our practice. So Gampopa also spoke about the innate mind itself is the Dharmakaya. So that the innate mind itself is the Dharmakaya. And then the various appearances, whatever appears, is the radiance of that Dharmakaya. So the mind itself is Dharmakaya. All appearances are the radiance of the Dharmakaya. And the innate thoughts naturally arising in the mind are the play of the Dharmakaya, or the natural display of the Dharmakaya. So when you remain in the natural state, then that is what you recognize. Then
Well,
all this,
mm.
all thoughts are recognized as the Dharmakaya. And so that is recognized when you remain within a state of that is undistracted. And there's no distraction, you continue to practice, then you see that in fact, all these thoughts, although they arise, they do not really actually exist. It is just that when we think that they exist, that we lose our practice. And and then when we become carried away by these thoughts, when we are unable to let them be, our practice is lost. And so therefore, in this, so the meaning here, the instruction is to practice over and over again to recognize that. And so it says here, a beginning practitioner must make a slow progress. But the beginning practitioner, essentially what that means, it's not necessarily somebody new, but it's anyone who doesn't really practice all that much. So anyone who doesn't practice that much, that just needs to make a steady effort. So practice just little by little, and it will improve. And so what you practice little by little is mindfulness that does not allow to be carried away by various thoughts. So you don't follow this chain of thoughts. You don't fall into distraction, but you're mindful. And so if you will keep practicing that, then essentially there's no other need to develop a state of non-thought. So
大集团的咱能做的去年些拉松，这做这别强的，相当于是减速巴拉比如说真能引啥的，但去年在的，真能做是就穷人是，减速巴拉的把减速添着，个拉的是需要的减速把添着，真能做穷了，能做可能的，先给你路添着个是，但马云年前提呢的，这得率没错做，这其实主都过马来西亚，我这主都过马来西亚，我真的没考广播呀，过马来西亚。내려오티 강파 제냠나 치송되는 다 샘내로 강냠나 치로 그라든 나 도시 공도야 요 말로 난 토구나 바지 초비 뭐 봐. 어때 또 손에 또 공도 말에 좀 조사리
And so now saying that thoughts are dharmata, what that means is that so it is like an ocean and its waves. The thoughts are like the waves on the ocean. They arise from the ocean and dissolve back into the ocean. And in the same way, thoughts arise from the mind and dissolve back into the mind. And seeing that is to see the dharmata. Dharmata means the actual nature, the true nature of those thoughts. So when you see that, you see the true nature of thought, and you see the true nature of thought if you practice without distraction. And when that is seen, then there is no more need to deliberately try to accomplish a state of non-conceptuality, because by seeing the true nature of the thoughts, you see that thoughts that have never truly existed on their own.
真的他挺久这个牛毛在这些呢年不点么个是很多。那牛毛在这身体上，但牛毛身体在这往多吃，适当点么俺家长多，但牛毛头俺了不着。我当初对那头中拿了，对了，他头中在那头俺是。我在城市充满快乐在外的是。但可惜他年不点多，俺是把牛毛提绑呀，他就去给的话。你那他可能牛毛在在外，但在这是那牛毛上一嘛着吧的。在这些那是但是牛毛上一米吧些送呢，些穷呢，在那年不点过呀嘛是。但牛毛上一米吧些呢，在那牛毛混就小外些他去图个嘛个，小当毛从路是小小图小什么的。我在这是呢的，别想着这行动在在外路的，路那的行动不是这个嘛着。我这哪意思？牛毛这可能在在外面点不明呢，这牛毛都要接触个嘛个，我这哪一种不是这意思。
And then number 6, once you recognize that disturbing emotions are rootless, you don't need to apply their antidotes. And so it is said that if one understands that afflictive emotions have no root, no basis, there is no need to apply antidotes. So the afflictive emotions, we talk about desire, hatred, ignorance, pride, jealousy, and summarized, they are the 3 poisons. So these afflictive emotions, they are the root of samsara. And because of that, some say that they must be abandoned by applying antidotes. But also, if one realizes that these afflictions themselves are rootless, so they lack any true existence, that they have no inherent nature to begin with, then there's also no need to apply any antidotes because there's nothing there to fix. The rootless means without a basis. For example, like a tree trunk whose roots have already rotted away, so there are no more roots. So if one knows that the afflictions are cut off from their roots, the afflictions do not actually inherently exist. In other words, there's also then no need to oppose them. There's no need to remedy them with antidotes.
他这趟腿年毛在那，他开始现在写了没给他呢？牛毛把他让一米吧，他写送那牛毛在这在外头去吧。别想着咱牛毛头上做汤布，别牛毛子开的那在汤布做前边这些做那个汤布看的穷的，在带进那在军做是写作要嘛的，后来他在看了那咱们那都是要嘛的牛毛，他看了多些在带进做是宇宙要嘛的，我听的。 다 6년 조선 탐지 다 제대로지 자와 제반이 봐 어다 자 제스나 테코쇼다리 단용 뭐 너도 사요 말이스 도사유 자와 뭐 메두스네 자와 제바스 용모 그런 내도식 사자데 요 말을 하데 메두 자와 제바스다.
So now these afflictive emotions that end up or applying the antidote, and so the actual true antidote to these afflictions is to see them with the eyes of wisdom, and that sees this eye of wisdom recognizes that these afflictions are rootless. And what that means is that when you are mindful and you observe the affliction that arises with clear mindfulness, then what you see is that, so where is it coming from? It's coming from nowhere. You can't really determine where it's coming from. And where is it now? Actually, it's nowhere right now. And where will it go? It has no place. It will go. It will go nowhere. So it hasn't come from anywhere. It's nowhere right now, and it's not going anywhere. And so that's the meaning of being rootless or baseless.
근데 다들 요도 나도 주마시 나 가럽 참고 고스나도 다 나도 아세 나와 다 나마자 러와 나와자 나와세는 다 통데야 라지라고 다 통세는 이나 나와 차화세 다 차바라서 세수 거기서 我在当咱苏州这种这个大说吧，有的苏州是说，他这他妈局嘛的皮送的，局嘛先他让一嘛着的，但这次说咱拖在下送，咱拖在让一，他说这说在下当给咱们在接送呢，他说他这让一嘛着吧，在接送呢，局嘛现在在搞个嘛的说，有点着怕下当没说怕帮个嘛的说搞个嘛的说着个嘛的是。소리를 좀 말했을 거예요. 주마다 우리가 하여튼 주마다 내로 계속 들으려 좀 표사리.
And then number 7. Once you recognize that sights and sounds are magical illusions, you don't need to accept or reject. So but once you know that all not just sights and sounds, but all appearances, all the things that we perceive, like forms and sounds, smells, tastes, textures, and the thoughts arising in our mind, they all are nothing but illusions, actually. And illusions do not actually exist. And since they do not actually exist, there's also nothing to reject and nothing to accept. So there's nothing to abandon and nothing to take up. In other words, there's no fault to be rejected or good quality to be affirmed, because what is illusory does not inherently exist.
他别想了，但我做他주마 나바 청마 대마 초대 주마 저리나 스마我做电子球情不有吧？我这주마 대버리지나 디 시에 메치친 다 청마 초대 나有吧？我这别想的是想那주마东看看不着那주마看不就有呢？第주마是主用的，我这电把电想抽的那有的是那种冲的，我电把电想我等抽咱们在当那的俺的。那주마在那块这说的呢，这没抽着样的，所以说跟那才就有啥哇？我在抽成绩是在주마的些，或者也是拿到抽成绩。
We think that things truly exist because we believe that things that this is how things are, and so then that is similar to perceiving the magical the illusions created by a magician. when a magician conjures up an illusion, what appears to us appears to be real. There's something that's really there, but actually, it's just our eyes being deceived. In reality, there's nothing that's really there. And so, in the same way, all appearances and sounds and whatever arises in our mind must be known as illusory by nature. And so if one does not understand things as illusory, then one falls into grasping. One falls into negating and affirming.
전에 다친 조 들어와 전에 동아리 모르 없이나 대화 지면 고스 어떻게 되게 쇼사 제가 동아리 서서 대 총을 모르 없을 삼는데 대화도 쓰려고 막그 동아 대화 하는 거对于第三个当初我那心情原来起床他要不啥的我真的当年我做得都写着你对吧写着要不在差真동아写着这怕马个休节期这几当这期末都真的我做被刚你忙不吃笑了吧 다 동아리에서 이제 총훈아 다 모르비가나 something 냠내지 티가데 동아리에서 저기 좁대로 요 말와 어디 동아리 말로 이제 신 동아리에서 이제 용의 근데 냠내 아 동아리에서 동아리 나도 용훈이 근데 냠내치야 this is 편도 친구요 다들 저 생각은 냠내지 친구이나 냠내야 공부도 저야 아 동아리가 냠내지 친구이 동아리랑 저기 좁이요 말이야 근데 모르잖아 그 동아리 대랑이 대화하는 거 그랑이 말로 되는 모르비 지난 대화 현 제목은 소대 대화 제도 야요 말에 와송 교사를 배치하다 동아스는 제 루피나차 샘제 동아다 지나서 뭐보다 요로 봐 와서도 되게 지고 쇼다 제제 지고나 아 대성미 받아 지고 그랬으냐면 지tom나되는 그 라기 칼레 또 원에 진짜 동아스 람스 체크야 아 동아 람스 체크tom나데 is 아무튼 강에 지고 동아서 들어와서 동아스 남치야 현재 대화 세기만 제로고 동아코나 대외에서 샤노고 어떤 마토데 동아도 제 바방나 방도 뭐 요마다 동아 가지고 나래요 그래 어떤 얘기가 소체조 방제 있는 치tom의 여보 사레스
And then next, number 8. Once you recognize that suffering is a city, you don't need to search for happiness. So if one knows, if one can see that suffering is actually an enhancement to the practice, then there is no more need to seek out any happiness. So what that means is that, and that's actually a point that's really useful for us practitioners to, because suffering always comes along, and generally we tend to think that naturally we want happiness, and when things turn out good, then we think that's happiness, that's a good thing. And when things don't turn out so good, then that's something that we think is something to be avoided. So we try to avoid suffering. And actually, because of that, because we want to be happy and avoid suffering, that actually in itself creates a lot of problems. So in truth, what we must see is that suffering does not actually truly exist on its own. When suffering arises, there is this suffering thought that arises. And at that moment, if you can practice and rest in the mind, then that resting in your mind will truly help your practice. But now, when you practice in this moment of when a suffering thought arises in your mind, so if you practice with suffering as it arises, you then may see that it has no real existence. And that is why suffering itself becomes a city or an accomplishment. And therefore, the suffering itself becomes happiness if it becomes an accomplishment. And therefore, there is no need to seek any other happiness. So we always encounter all kinds of problems. We experience physical illness or mental suffering, whatever suffering arises, we should try to take that onto the path. And then that suffering itself may become your accomplishment, may become your happiness. So if you can do that, then there is no more need to look for any other happiness, because suffering itself appears as happiness. And otherwise, if we don't practice in this way, suffering is something that cannot be avoided. It will always come anyway. So therefore, it would be good to try to practice in this way.
와, 드네 저가지 나도 안 맞지 봤어요. 여러 말 왜킬라마. 와, 맞지 봤어요. 이게 칼하우스는 녀모 이些 进步的是 녀모도 이些 进步的是 내조 나라 메시 내조 메시 내조 초스 나라 메시 지나데 내조 초레스 别强的想那个 나라 메지 气候呢 弄可惜钱啊这媒体超强的没被收起没买的我这弄可惜钱啊这弄一把真的一个年就把它这被抢到进步了说要么起用的真的这làm钱呢要么起过的东还是东还没把可惜嘛呢东还见不起了说东还了说可惜嘛呢这个要么提要空中做特别要么忙起特别这làm起特别我这件人把这做错特别我真是要这样来个啊，可能在空中做特别偏给了也种口啥的。
My Trippa, I was an Indian master and a guru of Marpa. My Trippa said that afflictions are great wisdom, like a fire in a forest. They are a yogi's friend. What it means is that when there's a fire, when a fire breaks out in a forest, if the fire is the fire is first small, then the wind will just put it out, blow it out. But once the fire becomes a blazing fire, a strong fire, then actually the stronger the wind is, the more it feeds the fire, the stronger the fire itself becomes. And in the same way, when a yogi meditates in this way, relying on the in instructions and taking everything what arises onto the path. If the yogi takes everything that arises as the path or practices with whatever arises, then the more negative conditions arise, the better it is for their practice. The more their practice enhances, the more suffering appears, the more it becomes the yogi's companion and enhancement on the path. It strengthens the yogi's meditation and meditative absorption, meditative power, and nothing no longer becomes an obstacle on the path.
我真的大挺久的，让身边密多呢破坏钱的故事。我当这个做破坏钱呀，他做这样的这那罗多嘛，他们那在破坏钱呀，他不行，他们说不这样，他说，真就去求啥了，做，我等于在让先结完没吧，求几个多少，那在破坏钱都要有嘛了，破坏钱都要有嘛的是，可是呢，啊，但先那罗多差的，先那罗多那上街的，先多上街一那种，是这先多那上街的话。我听你这多从那这破坏起到呀，需要嘛吧？我这种就是的。
And then number 9, once you realize that your mind is unborn, you don't need to train in the ejection of consciousness or poa. So it is because we have not realized the nature of mind that we rely on poa in order to be reborn in the Pure Land. But if you realize the natural state of the mind, then there's also no more need for a poa, a transference of consciousness, because realizing the nature of the mind itself is the Buddha. And so once that is seen, once that is realized, then there is no need for any transference.
我大家那个都破坏些，都想看的破过，现在这边眼松松的样子，但道理来说，人家这个恐怕要主要破过去了吧？晓得？这破过的，这破没过，就想看的，现在上身几万没多少了，几万没个多少，对，但破对呀，要嘛的，从去啥的。
And so then why would we want to transfer the mind? So we want to practice poa or transfer the mind out of the lower realms and into the higher states of existence. And so therefore, once one has realized the unborn true nature of the mind, one has reached that, and there is therefore no more need to transfer any consciousness.
我在破位被讲的这一档，这哪有啥吧？破解破解没别，恰当开始破解破解破解破解没别，恰当开始小话当别那叫了。吕内一些就没敲在是吕内一些就讲没把它敲在清波子还是。这里关的上界线的没是我这里但是敲在清波那老多，这里天上界线那没是。我在常州他不根据着不着这，是我在常一戳着呀，他不根据着不说是这里忙没有啥吧。
There is a quote from a Poa instruction, a text, and it says there, when there is when but it is seen that there is nothing to transfer and no one who transfers, so there is not anything that is there's nothing to transfer and no one who transfers. There is just primordial wisdom, and that primordial wisdom arises from the kind of lune kind of 얘기를 서
아,
예시단 lune 개발 driver 카르도
Luke Nelo de la cosa, Luke Nelo. I che da Lune sem da Luke na ne yo ta la cosa. I che ne me chao da ches. Tele gu ne sang je xian de me so da de Nelo te ya so ko so na chao da chen de Luke na ne de sem de. I che ju me to so na de chao da gu ne sang je xian me so ko sai.
So yeah, so currently in our body, the primordial wisdom is connected to the body, abides within the body. And once you realize that there is no one to transfer and no transference, that is when you recognize inexpressible Mahamudra. You have recognized the Buddha, and apart from that, there is no other Buddha to transfer to. So then there's this prayer in the end that says, "May the Dakpo Kagyu tradition of self-liberation be accomplished."
我单独对的意，那这先那路交在清波子让我出所那的呢，在这破完了嘞，这里破到一些偏人嘛，在那路让我上街是吧？当然就常常他们把上街送出去嘛，先那路就没多，在破送就这里不把咱破完破完就几多要嘛嘞是吧？多对呢。
So in brief, if one directly sees or comes face to face with the nature of Mahamudra, that is the primordial wisdom of the innate mind that dwells connected with the body. When that is realized, when you come face to face with your true nature that is currently within the body, then that itself is the actual poa or transference. That itself is called Buddha.
哦，真的当初嘛的啥的，康阳先东天那让东着嘛，我说先东要不记得呢，让东晓得就不得是，我真的，但是让东晓行不晓，在现在让东着嘛都，在先东在咱怕说他这吧，我这里在先东的记得就是在让东晓得着我给他装多，我但是其实嘛他这个是了，总有了说东西，其实嘛他这个总有。电气电器主要把它现在电器小了用，是吧？电气电器主要了，现在电器小了用是的呢。但现在的芯片怎么不当到年纪用呢？让东西让一口的有个那种是啥的。
And then number 10, when everything you do is for the welfare of others, you don't need to accomplish your own aims. So if you act in the way that always benefits others, then there is no need to try to accomplish your own benefit, because your own benefit is naturally accomplished by benefiting others. There is no separate own benefit. So, so acting for the benefit of sentient beings essentially is your own benefit. And Milarepa had said that, as you strive to accomplish ultimate happiness, the ultimate happiness, which is accomplished through altruistic activity. So striving toward ultimate happiness, you accomplish your own happiness of this life as a byproduct. So on the side, naturally. So if you just only think about others and only act for the benefit of others, then your own benefit will naturally be accomplished.
자, 다 되는 소 티바 진보 라운데 다 진바 수템 소바 잠텐라 소다 현동 진바 지디나 그거랑 이 장동 더 효랑 이 용거레스 어디서 교사다 현동 조 루비아 들으러
And then
이리 공부
when
어떻게 로종 특종나 계단 저렇게 현나지 총당 평가랑 그 코스에요 어때 리더님 마가담 개회냐로서 로종 특종냠내 치대리 그 그래서 Koran tsu da xianpian zamdo jeba de Koran tsu de sanje de tato kunguro to shirwa xia de yin tom ro ya tsu de yamna tsu de chung shu sarwa ji chung la le ba te zong ra kasi rangde tamchi xian ne ju xianpian tamchi rangde ju zong do ma la le o te na yi de no ba qin na rang de no ba qin rang rang de xie na yi de zong do ba te na yi cha lo sa de
mm, mm, so relying on the path of the Mahayana, just the practices of generosity, ethical discipline, patience, and diligence, and so forth, all the benefits you give to others is actually your own benefit. The more you benefit others, the more merit is accumulated, and so and purification and obscuration is purified, and therefore you benefit yourself the most. In the mind training, the 8 verses of mind training by the Kadampa masters, it says there's one verse that says, "I give all victory to others and take all loss upon myself." And this is how the past Kadampa masters, the geishas, have in Lojong and mind training. And it is just by thinking of others that they attained the accomplishment of Buddhahood. Now, Milarepa had said that all my happiness, all one's own happiness comes from others. That is working for the benefit of others. That leads to all your own happiness. And all harm that you give to give to others is actually harming yourself.
tene ta tren chen zang xin sta za da ji ji tene da sa guo jian ma zai jin ji guo sa ma de zang ken jian you lo ya den ken jian pe de bi ang zu de zai qi din zai xin ya guo sa ma de zang do des sa guo jian ma li ce ba ha le ce ba ce guo jian ma he de ce ba
Turku.
就是个是吧我在今天听你拍过了就是是就是个没吧起但你抽了其他情况出那么来你抽
We stop here for today. And so next week, we will actually not have any class because Kenshin Rinpoche is here next week. And while he's here in Chicago, and so it would not be good if we also had the class when he's also here teaching. So we won't have it next week on the 19th, but we will continue again on the 26th.
Yeah, okay, dedication. Yeah, you guys want this dedication in English?
Glorious, holy, venerable, precious, kind, root, and lineage lamas, divine assembly of Yadams and assemblies of Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, heroes, and heroines, Yogini and assembly of Dakinis dwelling in the 10 directions, please heed me. By the power of this vast root of virtue, may I benefit all sentient beings through my body, speech, and mind. May the afflictions of desire, hatred, ignorance, pride, and jealousy not arise within my mind. May thoughts of fame, reputation, wealth, honor, and concern for this life not arise for even a moment. May my mind stream be moistened by loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta, and through that, may I become a spiritual master with good qualities equal to the infinity of space. May I gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra in this very life. Even at death, may the torment of suffering not arise. May I not die with negative thoughts. May I not die confused by wrong view. May I not experience an untimely death. May I die joyfully and happily in the great luminosity of the mind as such, and in the pervasive clarity of Dharmata. May I, in any case, gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra at the time of death or in the bardo.
Okay, thank you. Ina Sony de ngazu chuzu guwa da wang
Sanin ari na disko nga. Yes, disko yes.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Good night.
Thank you, Rinpoche. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you so much.
Good night.
Sweet
Thank
dreams.
you.
Good night.
you.
Thank you.